So let us now proceed and look at the selection methods that we have in AutoCAD. And the reason we are going to look at the selection method is because selection is one of the things that you find yourself doing most of the time when you are working with AutoCAD. And the reason for selection, there are different reasons why you should select an object. One of them is the modification. Another one is if you want to delete that particular object, you can decide to select it and then delete it. So we haven't looked at any of these particular objects, at least for now. But of course, once we start looking at them, you'll note that modifying a particular object, for example, the line object, is it is something that we are going to be doing most of the times. So, but for now, let's see how we can select a particular object. Now, let's look at this particular line here. You can have single selections and multiple selections. We are going to start with single selections. If I click at this particular line, it is going to be highlighted, and then we are going to see some nodes. Don't worry about these nodes. So it means that that particular object is selected. If I proceed and click at this particular line once again, it is going to be selected and added to the selection. So you can decide to add to the selections like that. Note the selection mode. Remember, we have the crosshair there. It is showing the crosshair with a certain square, a square polygon at the center. So that is the selection method. Remember, we have the placement method. That is the placement. Okay, we have the placement mode where we don't have any particular square polygon at the center of the crosshair. But with the selection mode, of course, I've just pressed escape to move away from the addition object addition mode. So we have the crosshair with a certain triangle at the center. So you just need to click to add the selection like that. So that is one of the options that we have for the selection. So that is a single selection. So let's say, for example, I have done a selection like that, and I want to remove one of these objects from the selection, one of them or multiple. What you need to do is to hold down your shift. Now, if you hold down your shift and you hover the cursor of a selected object, you note that the crosshair is going to have a minus popping up. So once you click on it, it is going to be removed from the selection. I'm going to hold the shift once again, and then I'm going to remove that particular line and also this line from the selection. Just hold down your shift key and then click at the object you want to remove or you want removed from the selection. So that is the simple selection. Let us look at the next selection. Now here we draw a boundary, and we draw a boundary in two ways. The first boundary that I'm going to draw is from the left, from this point, and I'll draw it like this. Now with this one, if for example I reach at that point, this particular line is not going to be selected. So you draw from this particular left. Okay, you draw from the top left like that. Okay, yeah, you draw from the top left like that, and we move to the right. So if I click at that point, this line is not going to be selected. Now let me click from this other end, from the right. We click at the bottom right all the way to the left. Now, with this one, if I click at that point, the line is going to be selected. So those are the selection mode that I want us to look at. With the first one that you have just looked at, where you can see we have some fill, and it is a faint blue fill. With this one, for the selection to take place, you have to cover a particular target object fully. You have to cover it fully. So for example, if I click at that point, that line is not going to be selected. But once I cover it fully and I click, you note that it is going to be selected. Let me just press escape to deselect. If I click from this point to the right, you don't even have to halfway cover it. Just touch it a little bit. It is going to be selected. In this case, you note that that kind of selection has, you can see it has a green fill. So those are the two options that we have. Let's try to apply this. So let's say I want to select this particular polygon, and also I want to select this particular line, and also this polygon as well. In this case, you just need, you just need to click from this point and then move your cursor. Any object that is going to be touched or else covered fully is going to be selected. So if I click, you can see all the objects that have been touched are going to be selected, contrary to the other method where if I click at this point and I move it like this, unless an object is fully covered, it is not going to be added to the selection. So that is it. Now let's assume here that I want to select this particular polygon. There it is. I want to select it, and I don't want to select any other object. In this case, what I can do is to use this method. Now with this one, you just need to click. Just click. You just need to click. You don't need to drag. Just click and then move the mouse. Okay, yeah, move your mouse like that. And if I want this polygon to be selected, you just need to make sure that it is the only one that is fully covered. Otherwise, if you fully cover another object, it is going to be added to the selection. So that is it. So those are the boundary selection options that we have. Most of the time, you find that you are using that boundary, that option, or these particular options. Now, let's try again. If I click from the right all the way to the left, any object that is going to be touched by this area is going to be added to the selection. From the left all the way to the right, unless an object is fully covered, it cannot be added to the selection. For example, in this case, only these two lines were fully covered. Now with that, we can now proceed and use those selection options. Now let us now look at the lasso selection, which of course most people don't understand why it should be there and why it is there in AutoCAD. Now the lasso selection is also a very smart selection option, which of course can help you select what you want. Now if I click and hold and drag, so if I click and hold and drag, you can note that there will be a lasso that is going to be generated, and this one, other than creating a polygon, a rectangular polygon, it is giving you an option to draw something of any shape like that. In this case, it gives you an advanced way of adding to the selection and filtering what you don't want. So for example, that one. So let's say, for example, let's take a scenario where I want to select this line. Let's say I want to come up with a realistic option or method here. Let's say we have a line extending up to that point, and I want to select. I don't want this line selected, but I want all this line selected. So this line, and also these lines selected. If you use the method, the drawing method, for example, this method, it is not going to be possible because is it going to be possible? Yeah, it is going to be possible. Well, I have no problem with that, but assume okay, sometimes you find yourself that you need to use the lasso method. So let's say I want to filter out this one. I don't want it to add to the selection. So what I can do, click and hold. Once you click and hold, and then you can change, you can filter out what you need to be touched and what don't need to be touched. So touch this line as well, filter what you don't want to be touched. Let's say, for example, if even this line we want it to be touched like that, so filter out everything. So you can note that is the use of that particular lasso. So we have the lasso that have a green fill, and then you can generate a lasso that has the blue fill, the blue fill as well. So you click and hold and drag, and then you surround what you want. So that is it. Remember, for that one you have to fully cover. Okay, for the blue fill, you have to fully cover an object to be added to the selection. So the use of the lasso can also be useful if you want to, if you have tight angles of selection. Yeah. So let's say for example I have this line extend up to that point, and I don't want it selected added to the selection, and probably this line extends all the way up to that point, so I don't want it added to the selection. So in this case I can use the lasso. Remember, I also want this line added to the selection. So if for example I use this option, it is going to add the line to the selection, but let's say we don't want that. So I can just proceed, click and draw the lasso there. I don't want the line touched at all, so you need to filter it out using the lasso like that. Make sure you touch what you need to touch, but make sure you filter it out like that. It is not going to be selected, but the others are going to be selected. Now of course that is a lot of work. What you can do is just draw the rectangular boundary there, and then hold down your shift, remove from selection remove what you don't want from the selection. But if you have a number of objects that are supposed to be filtered out, then I would suggest we use the lasso. So those are the most important selection options that we have. We have another one which selects similar objects. For example, if I select this line and then, okay, first of all select it using a single selection, and then right click, we have the option to select similar. So once you select it, right click on an empty space, select similar. So all the elements, all the objects that are similar to that particular object that you had selected, then they are going to be added to the selection. Again, it can be useful sometimes. So let's say for example I have a number of walls that I have added to the project, and other than proceeding and clicking at those walls each at a time, you can select at a single type and then right click on an empty space, select similar. So all the walls are going to be selected, and that is the use of the select similar. So those are the some of the, okay, in fact most of the most popular ways of selection in AutoCAD, and with that you can manage to select your object anytime you want to modify it or else delete it.